We love breaking down baseball here, Jensen, and discussing what we think might happen this year. And after what happened last year, it's still painful for yours truly, oh so close to Toronto getting it done. That's where we begin today's edition of the Daily Diamond. Good choice today to break them down since we got Canada taking on US of A here in the WBC. Dodgers get it done at the expense of the Blue Jays, down 3-0 in Game 7. An absolute classic. If you had no money invested in it, it might be the best game you've ever seen in a World Series. For me, it was a painful one to watch the way that thing ended, having a 22-1 ticket on Toronto. But Jensen, I don't know if it was fluky. A team got hot at the right time down the stretch. It feels like even though they've lost Bo Bichette here to free agency to the Mets this year, are they a better baseball team this year from the one that won 94 games a year ago?
I don't know. And that's always the hard part is when you handicap a team that loses in the Fall Classic, traditionally there is regression that following season. And obviously one of their big key cogs, not only down the stretch, but also in the second half and even earlier before the All-Star break. You know, Bo Bichette and Vladdy Jr. were the two guys that were helping along with the Renaissance man, George Springer. It was that three-headed monster that really had to carry an offense that was absolutely awful in April and May. They didn't really hit their stride until after the All-Star break. And I think the rotation reinforcements, too, with Trey Savage coming in September. And, of course, a postseason to remember for that rookie, as well as the back end of a bullpen that, Dave, if you recall, there was a lot of people north of the border calling for Jeff Hoffman to be removed from the closer's role. It was Yariel Rodriguez, who they wanted, who was off to a great start. He ended up locking it in there towards the end of the season and through the postseason. But now as we kind of do the look ahead into 2026, the team that tied with the Yankees in the last day of the regular season, but winning the season series tiebreaker ultimately gave them the division title. And more notably, Dave, the bye from the wild card round. So home field advantage, it allowed them to be able to find that path to Rogers Center and through into the Fall Classic. As we take a look at where some of the additions and subtractions, you mentioned Bo Bichette, that'll be a big loss. And Kaz Akamoto, who actually is going to be, I think, as good a buy free agency-wise coming over from the NPB. There's a lot of people in baseball circles, and we had Steve Phillips on for our MLB VSiN futures draft. He actually is very, very high on Kaz Akamoto and what he could be not only as a third baseman defensively, but offensively to lengthen that lineup. That, to me, is where I start with this team, Dave. The top four, I think, are going to be okay. George Springer, Dalton Varsho, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Addison Barger. Even the top five, I'll include Alejandro Kirk, who has swung the bat really well through the end of the year, and also to get him started with the World Baseball Classic with Team Mexico. Anthony Santander, remember, they signed him to be that big bat in the middle. Dave, he's going to be lost already for at least the first 4.5 to 5 months of the season. So you don't even get to bank on a guy coming back who you signed as a free agent last year to be a key cog for you. See, he's out. Jesus Sanchez was a trade piece that they got from the Marlins, who we just talked about in July. And Ernie Clement was a guy that no one expected to have the offensive campaign that he did last year. So what do you get from the back half of the lineup? That's question number one. I'll throw it to you on question two. The rotation is going to be good. That's the big asset that they got is Dylan Cease coming over and signing from the Padres. Massive deal, massive 1-2 punch with him and Kevin Gausman. Jose Berrios actually looks a bit better in camp. Trey Savage is going to be in there. And then Cody Ponce is a free agent from the KBO that has drawn rave reviews for the people involved with Toronto. And then your old boy Max Scherzer decided, let's give it another go. Could be a 6-man rotation right out of the chute. And I don't think that's a bad thing, Dave, for where the Blue Jays will want to monitor young Trey Savage, try and kind of baby him through April and maybe a little bit of May. Pitching is going to be what has to carry them early because I have a lot of questions about the back half of their lineup.
We've talked a lot about this division. Obviously, we talked about the Red Sox yesterday. We talked about the Orioles. It does feel like if you're looking at one division top to bottom that could be very competitive, it does look like this is that division, that there's no real easy out anywhere, right? So when I look at the win total for a team like Toronto that did win 94 games a year ago, and it's down to 88.5, it's still a pretty high win total for a really competitive division. Jensen, I have no play on this team this year so far. I would look to that under, and that AL East at plus 250. I don't know that that's long enough for me to get involved for them to go back-to-back as divisional champs here. Certainly not going to play 15-1 or plus 650 to win the pennant here. I don't want to say it's a full fade team for me north of the border, but I think that is a little bit lofty considering what they've lost in the offseason, as you mentioned, with the injuries already here. How do you see it in the betting market? Because, and I certainly don't want to lay $2 for this team to make the postseason when we could think that maybe 1 through 5 in the division is going to be really, really tough.
Yeah, this is a hold for me right now. And if their offensive issues continue as they did at the beginning of last year, you are going to get not only way better to make the postseason price. I could see that dropping, I'm not going to say $1.50, $1.25. But I could see that if they get off to a pedestrian start offensively and they're kind of middling, and you get, maybe a rabbit in the Red Sox, or, the Yankees start off hot. The Orioles are going to be a force. I think the AL East is the best division in baseball. I don't think there's any argument there. It's going to be hard to find another division that has the depth and the continuity and just not a lot of daylight between first place and last place. I would also look at adjusted win totals here once we get underway during the season, Dave. If they are kind of a 500 team, then you might be able to get an 85.5. You might be able to steal a couple of wins there early, and you're also going to see them drift in the American League pennant market. Almost a Scotty Scheffler rule here. If the Blue Jays drift to 10-1 in the American League, then I think you can hop on them, just because this organization already showed you at the deadline last year they were willing to go and get the pieces they needed. They already did it to bolster the pitching staff, and I think they have the American League solved on one front. You better have depth in the starting rotation, or you got no chance in October. And we found it so crucial last year between Seattle and Toronto, how much the bye benefited those teams that had the horses, and then you force those wild card winners to have to start game one with their game 3 starter or their 3rd or 4th starter. That, to me, is where you look at Toronto. I would hold, but I would also look live at the end of April. Let's see where those playoff markets are, the adjusted win total markets, if they are there, and then perhaps if they're upwards of double digits to win the American League pennant, that might be the time to strike for the Blue Jays.
You mentioned it, that they were in play, by the way, for Kyle Tucker before he went to the Dodgers. They were trying to bring back Bo Bichette before he went. It looked like Philadelphia, then he ended up with the Mets. So they were trying to get some of those bigger tickets out there, Jensen. When you see that, knowing that that's how active they were, even though they failed to get some of those guys that I'm talking about here, you don't have issues that at the break, if it's not going the way they wanted to early, because it wasn't going their way early last year. And they held it together and then, go out there and get a Shane Bieber at the deadline. That proved to be very beneficial. Of course, you bring up Trey Savage. He fortifies that rotation. Nobody really saw that coming. Do you think that they would make more of those pushes in as long as they're maintaining contact like they did a year ago?
It would make sense, just knowing we've got the lockout looming and they feel like they're in win now mode. I am anxious to see what happens with Shane Bieber. The forearm fatigue, as we talked about before camp started, a little bit of a red flag. Actually, not a little red flag. That's kind of a big red flag. What will the continuity of the back end of the bullpen look like? Tyler Rogers is a nice addition. You remember seeing him from his short tenure there with the New York Mets after the trade deadline. He comes over as a nice setup man. Louis Varland and Brendan Little were so key for them down the stretch. It really is the offense for me, Dave. And you're looking at a team that was the best in Major League Baseball as far as team average, as far as team on base percentage. They were 4th in runs scored. They were only 11th in home runs, and I don't see them really vaulting past that this year. But it really is that 6 through 9. What can they do to try and turn that lineup over day in and day out in what is a beast of the East there in the American League?
I still have that 22-1 ticket at Circa. I have not thrown it away yet. It's kind of like when you break up with a girlfriend and you keep some of the stuff, the nostalgia around. At some point, you just got to get it out. So I don't know when I'm going to throw that ticket away, but I haven't done so just yet.